로튼 타마레 아니 카시 로전 잡산 제브레 카시 차셰 카시 제브레 아니 로전 데이차네얀 차겐 사마 차잉이 된다라 건조 람림 참테스테고레 아니 차부직 이기아부직 아니 뉴네 차 카시 땅고로와 제가 아니 안chen 뉴니마토 셴바타마 찬사레스 달롱아 손뉴네 뎀 마토 참콘소 코란 찹산 제 마토바 차게레스 아니 페셰 제멜로라 찹산 차긴 참마 사이게라고 두사 So what are the topics that you've studied in the last couple of years?
Over to you. This is your test.
So mindfulness potential, how to meditate, presenting the path, basic overview, the spiritual teacher, death and rebirth, all about karma, using refuge, and Geshe-la offered us refuge at that time, establishing daily practice, samsara and nirvana. How to develop what
So what's included in samsara and nirvana?
Lower realms and mainly about lower realms, freedom from the sufferings of the lower realms. Four noble truths. 12 links.
Bodhicitta, transforming problems, wisdom of emptiness, which you helped us out with.
Transforming problems, by John.
Yeah. Introduction to Tantra, and this one, special integration.
So the Lamrim subject that was in John Midam does Jedwa, sentence sengi yunde need Chamitapa Lojong the Satan Langi chashes in the Peshin Lamrim that was in Red. Ni the Bashi Koa come true. Tante la chuni ni sanke ngagi ngutu sangagi ngutu ani tombani tonitawa then dawachiresha.
And Geshe-la, every module, 1 weekend teaching, 1 weekend meditations, and also review questions and reading. Review questions and readings, that's for each module.
Lilopsen relayan konzo tab jamita taworo ani yan dilayan konzola chiwa kuna ani chugi chasone konzo lansama gyokto ramare ni soso ranjon chechidu chiro ani dawrela tinde 우ken지 년도 배쳤다 로진체 개체시 아니야 니마치 되네 공격단 같이 되는데 지금 That's very good. Geshe-la is rejoicing in your efforts. Can you hear me at the back? All right. Cool.
아니 the teaches the 대시디 기치슈 자기여서레스 라 간스나 그까지진다 당분이 이거 바라네 야간도 여러분이 거기네야 아니 지 디비 롱나가 나눠야 제르스 쳐서 나눠야 지 법칙 제단 돌듯이 지 놓다 벌어야 나오는 거지 괜히 대시는 저기 찍찍해 아니 가두춘도 그 뒤에 슈가 있으라 여러분 지금 배트 디셔스 마스가 기치는도 소디 만족이 아니 고번 고초고도 라 고번 토야기 탑 고는 이거지 니치단게 겹숨 시험이 최고디 아니 최고조디 고는 미래 샤요라 아니 디키치시 간지 산기게 최고 인고디 아니 고는 일을 통해서 덴바신을 투데버치 야시야담 차고도 왔어. 디송송스가.
So that's very good. Of the different topics that you guys have been studying, the most important one is the Four Noble Truths. Geshe has been earlier on this year, around January, February, to India. That was at a time in which traveling was still possible. So he's been to India and met with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. In his conversation with His Holiness, he told him what we study here at Chenrezig Institute, giving an overview of the different courses and topics. And His Holiness made that comment that that's very good. And of those topics, the steps of the path to enlightenment, the Lamrim tradition, and particularly the Four Truths are important, are essential. And also of the Four Truths, he spoke of the need to develop a better understanding of the last two truths, true paths and true cessations, which help us to basically understand what is the essence of Buddhism that we need to integrate into our practice. So there was a particular focus that His Holiness placed on making sure that we develop a better understanding of true paths and true cessations, and then integrate that into our practice, particularly true cessations that bring about the elimination of all the causes of our unsought suffering. And also in their conversation, Geshe says that in giving teaching here at the center is trying as much as possible to condense the Buddha's teachings and to draw from the two aspects of the Buddha's teachings, the aspect of the philosophical view of dependent origination and the practice of non-violence, non-harmfulness. These two aspects, the philosophical view of dependent arising and the practice of non-harmfulness, are the quintessence of everything that the Buddha said. And with respect to the practice of non-harmfulness, Geshe says it's not just abstaining from harming others. It is through developing that genuine sense of concern for others, having a sense of care for others, then you develop that practice, that mode of behavior in which you abstain as much as you can from harming others. And His Holiness was very pleased with the way that Geshe was approaching the spiritual program here. He was patting him on the face, caressing him, so to speak, and said that's an excellent way of approaching the spiritual program.
Tizada sanjige chuga kejusanamdu nimbu di ani dembashi shilashabi toni ani tawatin jongtang ani joba tselmi toliya ani chamzig lamya doyadi da ani sanjige chuga yangzi ani tebachimbu chuga nyangning zo di chagdasra.
And as we said, the foundation of the practice of the Buddha Dharma is first of all the Four Truths, and then integrating those two aspects of the philosophical view of dependent origination, the practice of non-harmfulness, non-violence. That is the very foundation for everything that we practice in the Buddha Dharma.
And she did like and did a young piglia, jump at some and Lanin Dutchy, and Gomja sofa cherry, and D. Gomgi, Nimbo Toba Gulati, that's Gavdin so dim who gave it on Sogi, and it's Sosa Jujana, 2 years. The hand challenge so rich, and Chasaya, he Jasaya, and Mendrasaya, and Chinkmioni there so. Masiva Kanji Loni Gilia Chansu and Chowtana damage. Kanji and then is Sanji Komo Mato Bardo and one Tani K Yodevic and Chalaji Chenrezig Institute towards the same thing, and it Gawayi, Yiran, Kubai is raw.
So you've spent a couple of years in going through the topics that you've just mentioned. Not only you've studied that, let's say, in an academic way, but you also looked at the practice component of how to take all those different teachings and put them together into your spiritual practice. In order then to develop the qualities of the practice, you also need to take care of the side of accumulation, accumulating the collections, purifying negativities and obscurations. These two elements, the accumulation and purification, are those things that support our spiritual development. And not only you've been following the academic study and also the practice side of this program, also there are plans for building up the stores of the accumulation and purification so that you have everything that you need in order to take it together with you all the way to the attainment of the state of enlightenment. And that being the case, Geshe says that it really rejoices, it really appreciates, it has a sense of respect to everything that you have done in the last couple of years.
Any child loves in chair, Choma D, any cow some something, some of the engine go to us, the Yovina, any Mintuni Chelia, Pendoyong Saris.
And with such activities, at the end, what we do is we dedicate all the virtue that we have accrued in doing that for the sake of a positive goal. So this is also the time to recall all the efforts that you have made in the last couple of years or whatever might have been your participation, to just recall those roots of virtue and to dedicate them to a certain positive goal. In some sense, you can say that if you were to think of the value of those roots of virtue in comparison with some monetary value, you can say that it's just kind of monetary value is just like one fraction of the benefit that you get from such activity. So you can think of the virtue that you have created, the way that you dedicate this virtue to act as something that you can use as a support for continuing on, becoming consistent in developing the states of your own path.
These are the Muntuni Romatavana and Tsavigi, Chavalabjin Shuji or the Tetsangi, and in on 32 that Drew never is a Muntuni Drugodas, Muntuni Droyatianchi. Nimatabalaya, Chequage, Kanji, Nimatabalaya, Chequage, Chagados, the chair, the famous location would raise rock.
And to continue to go on, you also need to develop consistency in what you do. If you do it every once in a while, it'd be difficult to build up this momentum in which you continue your development. It's so important to make sure that you still continue to engage with that on a daily basis. So now at this point in time, Geshe gets the impression that there are some practices then that for you become quite important. Like, for example, doing a practice of 100,000 recitations of Vajrasattva, prostrations, of making mandala offerings and so forth. Could be that for some of you, that becomes now one of the most important priorities in your practice. And as such, of course, it's a good thing.
아니 산지 군조 추군조 긴두 군조 세대 아니 시오지기 아니 천동 체대비 레라우 소로지 차와이나 디기오 마라스 이런 레라우 요 마라스 디어바이는 때 거미 초를 쓰고 유세 거를 요 마라스
But as such, just doing prostrations, recitations, and so forth is actually not such a difficult thing to do. It's rather easy in the sense that you can say that anyone can do it. So if it is something that anyone can do and it's so easy, then the practice of the Buddha Dhamma would be made then not that hard, which would have meant that it would not have been so difficult to attain the state of Buddhahood. And particularly when you consider our objects of refuge, the Buddha refuge, the Dhamma refuge, and so forth, they would not be so rare and sublime. In a sense that when you look at the objects of refuge, the Buddha refuge, the Dhamma refuge, and so forth, we call them the three jewels. And the etymology of the word jewel in Tibetan is that which is rare and sublime. If something is so easy to attain, if it's so easy to become Buddha, if it's so easy to develop the Dhamma refuge, would definitely not be rare. It would not be that sublime. So what Geshe is saying here is that we have that idea that then the priority of our practice now would be mandala offerings, prostrations, recitations, and so forth, which make it sound as if it's rather easy. That, maybe we should look at what is difficult to attain through a spiritual practice.
Teresa, these are the Delia Nambu Hundros Lagores, Hundruvichu, Hundros. These are Mushit Martas, the Yamning Hundroya, and the Sergeant Cherry, and Piggy that Chada Menda that Yellow Sobati, and Yamning Hundroya. 100 years, the Mush Martas, right? And Titsu, the Yimbadi, Zimbaina, the test Digo.
These practices, doing prostrations, the recitation of the 100-syllable mantra, making prostrations, mandala offerings, and so forth, these are called preliminary practices, which means that they lead us to the actual practice. So it's good to keep that in mind. Although you want to do those practices and complete them, in the great scheme of things, they are considered to be preliminary practices which lead you to the actual practice. So thinking that if you think that these are the main things that I need to do, these are the primary Buddhist practices that I need to pick up, well, it's not quite that. They're the preliminary practices.
Sajajilaya Kambachi Yaviovana, and Tambu Sakwanyamyadi, the Munduros, Sakwanyamba Samjiki, Chetan Gichani, and Kayan Druyo Maras, the Kambitola Kayan Druyo Madine, the Kemanya Ranyamros, Quenyamchi, and the Quenyamba Ditolia, and Zudrin Chavana, then have that the witch Yonaz Gioras, a deep Chedodi, and in Yamling Mundalaya, and a Sergeant Chet, or the
And these preliminary practices of prostrations, the 100-syllable mantra, and so forth are practices through which you accumulate the collections and purify negativities and obscurations that constitute the very basis, the supporting basis for your practice. So, for example, suppose that you're going to build a new house. First of all, you need to create a level ground. You need to flatten the ground or to create a level ground upon which you would be able to pour the foundation, to lay down the foundation. And this is what we do with our preliminary practices. We level the ground. We build up the stores of accumulations and purifications so that on that basis, we'll be able to build our actual practice. This is the purpose of such preliminary practices.
And the Denshi Tomera, Tangazu Tombalea, and the Camry Domba Kilea, Sova, the Migichu, Sudumnea, Sova, who Yimbashi, and Ditolea, and Denshi Namshalaya, Lander Shinjimalo by Shivita, 아니 남주 중국도스 다 대실이야 냠는 치용 되지 아니 그게 유진님 타투 돌에 상당고 잡아라 아니 리퍼 쇼치 돌에 제가 쇼치 맞잖아 니번이 투여 말았어 다니 마투 가려다 알카고 차보도 섬 유샤바나 된자님 지고 말았어 디 돌이야 아니 갈리자고 조직 창도스.
So then, these are preliminary practices that lead us to the actual practice. Now, the actual practice is based on the four truths of noble beings. So then, of course, we integrate different elements into our practice, going for refuge, developing the right consideration of karma, actions and the results that they bring. But still, in the great scheme of things, when we look at what we do in a practice, what we do in a practice is to develop a mode of behavior, to take up what we need to do in relation to the four truths and cast aside what we ought not to do, also with respect to the four truths. So all of the different things that we do in a practice fall under those two things. Taking up what we need to do in relation to the four truths and stopping or casting aside what we ought not to do in relation to the four truths. So also together with doing that, we develop an insight into the way that things exist, into reality. And it's not an easy thing. So when you start to look at the Buddhist descriptions of the way that things exist in reality, you see that the presentation is quite complex and it's not easy to understand. But if you think that this is too hard for me, I find it too difficult, I don't understand it, and therefore there is no point in doing that, it's a mistake. It is difficult, it is complicated, but we ought not to set it aside, but still do whatever we can in order to develop some understanding of reality.
아니 람덴의 때문에 아니 지 동학 그 군중 방수기 아니 람들기 남샤디 디 약부지 마시바이나 디니야 태부침 위치 지 아니 심전 탐지려야 인지기에서야다 심전 탐지기지도 라면에 위한도 좀 잔줄되고 잔주고 샘기에서야 돼서 근데 용의 매기로 그래도 왔어.
So then, in relation to the four truths, you looked at the way by which we experience unsought suffering in samsara through that presentation of true sufferings and true origins. But you've also looked at the way that we can arise from those states of suffering through the development of true paths that bring about true cessations of our suffering. Without developing an understanding of these topics, you will not be able to develop genuine compassion to sentient beings and genuine mind of enlightenment in which you become determined to attain the state of Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So in our Mahayana practice, we set out to develop compassion and bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, but really without having this good foundation in the understanding of the four truths, the practice of compassion and the practice of bodhicitta would be quite poor.
Derbena Dinshi Namsha the Mashina and Simjan Tamji Pigi Karsataji Koyu Dunghali and Jinsu di Singmaras. Koyu Dunghali Jinsu the Mashina, Koyu Dunghali Jin Yoba Matrana, and Teletrana Yambigi and Sango di Yungmaras Rada.
So, for example, when you look at the presentation of the four truths, you come to understand how we are bound by cyclic existence, by samsara. We are bound into samsara, and thereby we end up experiencing suffering. So without understanding the mechanism by which we find ourselves bound within cyclic existence, we'll not be able to develop the understanding of the way by which we can break free from the bondage of cyclic existence.
인지면은 장주 셈 자와 디가만 장주 셈이 뭐 장주 셈전 탐지 기체도 아니 라면 조정 거 되느냐 당연히 지인이야비 로드기 다 메나 아니 동반이 가주스 공부이느냐 동반이 또 로디 아니 님문보다 CCTV 우리 님문 로세디 무슨 거래셨어
And without understanding the samsaric mechanism by which you are bound to cyclic existence and experience suffering, you'll not have the foundation for developing the sense of compassion that is required to be the root of bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment. So you might be then thinking, may I become a Buddha in order to liberate sentient beings from suffering? But if you haven't developed the right degree of compassion, which needs to be the root of bodhicitta, bodhicitta will not arise in a way that you will become so determined to become a Buddha for the sake of others. So we can see how to some degree the lack of understanding of that samsaric mechanism that the presentation of the Four Truths provides you with will affect our development of compassion and bodhicitta. Now, if you're not absolutely determined to attain the state of enlightenment for the sake of other sentient beings, it might be that you come to realize reality the way that it is, but without a strong bodhicitta in which you are determined to become Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, you'll not be able to eliminate your own obscurations, afflictive and cognitive obscurations.
아니 차다마소나 아니 초반이 라테니 풀고 그랬어. 그러 아니 장주 파르 차 장주 파르 들어와야 아니 초반이 라테니 아니 장주 파르 들어고 만시 아니 만주지 아니 다치 호란지 내고서는도 아니 심진 타마와 아니 산지 살이야 조야야 아니 초반이디 집 장주 셈다 집 동반이 또 셔름님이 디니 라테니 파르 들어고 소요랬어.
His Holiness the Dalai Lama has been giving teachings online for the last few months, and in one of the sets of teachings, he drew from Chandrakirti's supplement to the Middle Way, the Madhyamika Avatara. Then it is possible that some of you have listened to the set of teachings. In one of the verses that His Holiness recited, it was said that just like a bird needs two wings in order to lift up and cross the ocean and reach the safe shore on the other side, so do we need to develop the wings of method and wisdom in order to cross the ocean of samsara and reach the safe shore of liberation and enlightenment. So we need to combine those two wings, the wings of method and wisdom. Method, bodhicitta, and wisdom, the wisdom of emptiness.
디가도 인증이 신고도다 산지 축님보디 아니 잔주고 셈다 한 돈이 또 따와 있는 거지 디니를 땐 아니 심진 산지 고마디 디니를 땐 주고 버렸어 이제 축님보디 잔주고 셈다 돈이 또 따와 차고 왔어.
And this point is so important to us. These are the two aspects that we need to develop. We need to develop bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, and the wisdom that realizes emptiness. These two aspects, the aspect of method and wisdom, are the two aspects that we need to combine in order for ourselves to reach the other side, the side of Buddhahood.
안 돈도비 따위기 직선받지 마잖아. 안 대바친 유출이야. 나도 잔주고 생겼다. 직제 선받지 마잖아. 안 대바친 유출이야. 로비어 말했어. 대바친 유출을 만들면 선자 탐지
And that becomes really important to us because when we look at our spiritual practice, we want to integrate those two aspects in a spiritual practice, without which whatever we practice, whatever activity, whatever behavior we take up with our body, speech, and mind, it doesn't become a practice that leads us to the state of enlightenment, in a sense that, first of all, of course, in order to make sure that in our practice we do create causes for the state of enlightenment, we need bodhicitta. We need to be motivated by bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, without which whatever we take up in our practice, if it is not motivated by bodhicitta, it will not contribute to the causes for the attainment of the state of enlightenment. So it is important as much as we can that when we take up our spiritual practice and whatever we do, that we also integrate those motivational forces into our practice so that through that, we create causes for enlightenment. So then we mentioned those two aspects, bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, and then wisdom that realizes emptiness. Now, with respect to wisdom that realizes emptiness, and the way that we also combine it together with bodhicitta, without this, we will not then be able to practice well the states of the secret mantra, which means Tantra. Which means if we also don't make sure that we develop an insight into reality, into the view of emptiness, if we then think that we can practice Tantra and accomplish a great deal, that will not come about. Also, we do need to develop an understanding of emptiness, then to make it a realization of emptiness in order for a tantric practice to bear fruit. So we regard the tantric path to be a quick path. It is a swift path that enables us to attain the state of enlightenment in one lifetime, based upon one body. But then in order for it to be that effective, we need to have a realization of emptiness, without which it will not be possible to make our tantric practice become a swift path to enlightenment. And since we mentioned Tantra, you might wonder, what then are the differences between Sutra, the Sutra system, and the Tantric system? There are a few differences, but then in looking at a more specific one, the thing that makes it possible to use that quick path to attain the state of enlightenment in one lifetime based upon one body, this is a feature that is unique to the Tantric system. Something that is not found in the Sutra system is found only in the Tantras. It is explained in the Tantras. That explanation comprises of meditations that in which you meditate on the three bodies, the three kayas, at the time of the result, which means that you meditate on a path in your meditation. You meditate on a path that bears similarities with the three bodies of Buddha that you will attain at the time of the result. So these four forms of meditation, in which at the time of the path you meditate on aspects that are similar to the result, those meditations do not exist in this Sutra system, but they do exist in the Tantric system, and that enables you to follow a quicker path that enables one to attain the state of enlightenment in one lifetime, in one body.
데리다 다 곰수디야 쪼디 페나타 나조 수수 이담 간다지기야 로 페나타 이담 산된 지스 간다지 공기가 바네야 곰규기 이담 디 아니 라니 아니 이담 디 모에 깨치니 아니 쪼 고메디 아니 디치고라스 로.
And when we say that during the time of the path, you have a meditation that bears similarities with what you attain at the time of the result, you do a deity practice. So deity in the Buddhist language is called the yidam, right? So you do a meditation and a deity practice. So you might be practicing a deity that is called Yamantaka, or Guya Samaja, or Chakasambhara. And in any one of those practices, you generate yourself as the deity, which means that you yourself arise in the nature of that deity. But not only those three deities that we've just mentioned, we have also other practices that you might be more familiar with. Like, for example, the practice of Chenrezig, the practice of Tara, and so forth. There are practices in which you yourself arise as Tara, you yourself arise as Chenrezig. So then you might wonder, I'm doing a meditational practice, a deity practice in which I arise in the nature of Chenrezig. I transform into the nature of Tara. This is what this sadhana is doing. What is the connection between that and the view of emptiness? What is the connection between those deity practices and wisdom that realizes emptiness?
manche peme zapena jizun drama de gongguya wainas kiran gi lu tagaran ya ani jizun drami kulula ya min gombai no titak da de mas ra.
So then, without having the view of emptiness, without developing wisdom of the view of emptiness, there could be some awkward things that might occur to you in your meditation. Like, for example, suppose that you're a man and you're meditating on a female deity. So as a man, for example, you generate yourself as Tara, a female deity. Without having the basis of the view of emptiness, it could appear to you to be a bit awkward. How then, as a man, do you arise as a female deity?
Manduwa kharis na and that pena tangin thomaros ngada ngada ludi kharis na and shata rusum tribiki and dugding luchagoras. Tian ludi pigi shata rusum chibu maimata namo layachi and kanji and chin chak tribiki and sopa kang de you that indeed Jawa Surachki ludi and jizun dreaming kulu yimachi gombaina the dream masas.
So, for example, you look at your own body, and your body is a body of flesh and blood, which means that not only it's a very gross body, but also it has many of those impure elements. Or particularly when you start to think of the makeup of a body that is body of flesh and blood, not only what is occurring outside on the surface of the body, but also what's happening internally. Then you might think that how can I essentially transform this body that is not that clean, actually, it's quite a coarse and gross body. How does this body become a body of a deity such as Tara?
간다지 동반이 또 위셔럽다 동반이야 간다지 저처럼 있다는데 아니 토마 랑 하, 공 마지 공 아니 랑 아니 동장 지야디 다 내가 치슈디 디차고랬어.
So this is where the meditation on emptiness becomes important to a deity practice, in which, in order then for you to rise into a deity, you first of all need to dissolve yourself into emptiness. So you purify into the state of emptiness, and from that state of emptiness, you arise as a deity.
These are any that common any 수수띵도 아니 동반이 공진 간지 소소 동반이 결세 그냥 동반이 결세야기 아니 소소 동반이 결단다 지 열었다 간지 아니 난주도래야 나우 냠비지 에치 나 프리딩 코란에 지 아니 라운드 여버다면 차대기 차나 디톨이야 오늘 삼을다마이나 아니 제 용기 아니 딘디 자원이 매봐 간지 율딩네 아니 나시 자원이 마트바 나싱이 장원이 트바 자원이 매봐 아니 그 아니 파치 민딱 삼아도 유딩이 트바 자원이 매봐치 아니 동바치티 삼고도스다 간지.
And when you follow certain meditational practices, deity practices, sadhanas, you see that at the beginning of the sadhana, there is that statement, things become emptiness, transform into an empty state. It is found in most, if not all of our deity practices, sadhanas. So then you think of yourself and come to see that you, in relation to yourself, you do not exist objectively. Like, for example, you start to examine your body and you check whether you exist within your body, in that whether you objectively exist within the body and so forth. When you perform that analysis and try to see whether there is any sense of objective existence, of independent existence, if there is something that you can point at within your body and so forth, and find your actual sense of I or me within that, you come to see that there is no such objective existence. There is no objective existence whatsoever. You do not exist in that independent way in any form, shape, or form. So that is the basis for then arising, meditating on emptiness, and from that arising as a deity.
강도의 마드바 아니 동반이 줄스 아니 동바 디가네 아니 동바 디가네 다라니 동반이 줄 동바 디가네 아니 지들입니다 아니 고시 교송 냠바치 디타우르스 다라 시시 차드 마르네 디타우치 토네 아니 다니 산검세디 딘디치 고고도스.
So we're not looking at a very detailed explanation of that meditation practice in which you meditate on yourself as a deity, but in general, you come to see that you and all other phenomena do not exist independently. Nothing whatsoever exists objectively. Nothing whatsoever exists independently. And then from that state, you think, I arise as the deity Tara, right? So this view of emptiness is the very basis for our generation, for the generation of ourselves as a deity such as Tara.
아니 동방하니츠 아니 하샤스알디 디타브르스다 간다르시 코고나.
So just to give you an analogy that illustrates that, if you have a water bubble that emerges from water, it is not different in nature from the water. A water bubble, you can say, is the same nature as water. Similarly, when you think of arising from within the state of emptiness, emptiness is just like that water. you rise in a certain form, like for example in the form of Tara, but still it is the same nature, the nature of emptiness.
And Mabadis Gogres Loungi, Nilaya, Tombani, Tawalaya, Koa, Chona, and seeming Ivanyochik. Tether Majona Yachi, Tombani, Sambada, any you didn't keep a choosing member. Toby Tatsan Ton, that and it should come jiggy, and Namjat, that chili of a pinji, and it's so as Yobina, and it didn't hang Namaya, Javina, Love Chimbu, Jungius.
So then when you follow a certain sadhana, like for example the sadhana of Yamantaka, then it says things become empty or transform into an empty state, to the state of emptiness. Then from the state of emptiness, instantaneously arise in the form of the glorious Vajrabharava, with one face and two arms and so on and so forth. So you find such statements in your meditation sadhana. So for that, you need to have wisdom that realizes emptiness, which means that you need to have valid cognition with respect to the view of emptiness. And of course, looking at our current state of spiritual development, we might not have reached the mark of having a realization of emptiness. So we start with making sure that we develop a correct understanding of emptiness, in which our understanding of emptiness accords with the fact. This is how we steer our practice. We aim our practice at developing a better understanding of emptiness, the way that things exist, so that it can act as a foundation for then in the future using such practices in which we rise as deities.
Mushi Gomdi, and Tomani Chanjusen. Dini Tomani Koyabuya, D. Ton Pilia, and Tombingan, Tasha Damatuta, said Tomburia was raw.
So then you might do such a meditation practice. So still trying to nut out what are the essential principles that you need to have in such an actual meditation session. There will still be bodhicitta and wisdom that realizes emptiness. Of course, there are other things that are included within that practice. Like, for example, as we said, you will meditate on things become empty. And then from an empty state, you will arise as a deity and so forth. There are different elements included within such practices, but still the quintessence of the practice are bodhicitta and the view of emptiness.
And Tengasa there, and Zangasa there, Yigasa there, Chatsi there, Merapi there, Samalo, and Tunsum Chagores.
And as these two are the principles of the actual meditation session, there are things that you do in between meditation sessions, those periods in between. So you might be reciting some mantras, and there are different types of mantra. There are name mantras and root mantras, and there is the 100-syllable mantra, what we know, which we either call the Vajrasattva mantra, or this mantra, 100-syllable mantra, that is worked out to be a mantra of another deity. There are ways of doing that, but those activities, and you might also do mandala offerings and other things. These activities occur in between actual meditation sessions, and as we said, in the actual meditation sessions, the two principal things that you do are meditations on bodhicitta and the view of emptiness.
Yeah, that one the Nansu Tunsam Kalaya Karchi was done, Tunsam Kalaya, and Lunga Yigsumbi, and Chadang Chola Tanchi, Namgu Vichapa Chedi, Tunsam Vichaw, the Dim sort of Chigoras, the Gajajata Norgudas, two mushi deep gom jet, changes the common plus or gom, that deep layer, to do gom, that during gom, calculate, and Tanchi in Yungurata, Nan Soya Chedu, and Lamin Sengasaya, Yedam with Sengasaya, and Yigasaya, and Chasaya Soba, Menda Pedi, Nan Suyu Chawalia, Zio.
it offers a radical approach to a meditation session, because for us, often it seems that what we do in between meditation sessions is, sorry. It seems that what we do in between meditation session is using our body, speech, and mind sometimes to things that seem to be tending towards the afflictive side, in that in between meditation sessions, our activities might be involved with sense of attachment, a sense of hostility, and so forth. But actually, when you think of the things that should be the main meditation practices and the things that you should do in between sessions, it's a different understanding of how then we use our spiritual practice. The actual meditation practice is designed for enhancing, developing and enhancing bodhicitta and your view of emptiness. And in between sessions, you do things like you recite different mantras, you the name mantra of your lama, or the 100-syllable mantra, or another name mantra, or what have you. You do prostrations and so forth. These are considered to be things in between sessions. The actual session is for bodhicitta and the view of emptiness.
Chaya de diredos, Sechi Luchilaya, Tribuco, Tungushi Kalaya, and the Nimachilaya, Tushita, and it tunsum with Chawadi, and it should hang us at the Mendasa, Tunsum Liatin, two Chili, and it Melo Peshe, and Kashi Stantuana, Jachet Gatan, but Ping Sabuchik. Nyamne set to which Yungus at the Mado, and Kaukalaya, Nimachilaya, two sheet Tamayaya, two to Tundon Shuji, in our Laya, Chanjus and the Tomani said, Chilaman, and Tunzam Kalaya, bed in the Samuel, Zoni Majachi, and Chawashamba Shun Rudevana, and I'm just Chisanga Chukazus Nyabayaya, and the Tundit Tambachi Kabushu inside as well.
In that sense, when you think of those activities that we do in between meditation sessions, such as, for example, prostrations and mandala offerings and different recitations, these are activities that are considered to be things that you use for relaxation. You take a rest, right? So you take a rest with prostrations and other recitations. As such, they are not the actual meditation sessions. So then when you think about it, when you start to think about it and get a different perspective of your spiritual practice, you come to see that it's not easy at all. And therefore, attaining the state of Buddha is not an easy feat whatsoever. It is quite difficult. But then you develop a certain intentionality in your spiritual practice. You think that, well, in terms of what I do need to include and combine in my meditation practice, I need to develop those two main aspects, bodhicitta and the view of emptiness. In between sessions, those are the activities that I should be doing. And then when you develop that intentionality in your approach to spiritual practice, if you can then set aside a period in your life in which you focus on that, if you have the ability to do it for a few years, then you really, after some time, you see that you're creating this good basis for spiritual practice. Whereas if you do it seldom, or every once in a while, you decide that, that you're going to do a day in which you have 4 sessions, and you're going to do it only every once in a while. Geshe feels that if you do not create this continuity in your spiritual practice, if you're doing it only in that fickle way, sometimes you do it, sometimes not, you'll not be able to harness the power of the mind well in your actual meditation practice. And also in between sessions, your mind will be a little bit scattered, not really focused on those activities that are done in between meditation sessions. And as such, it is hard to expect that your spiritual practice will then bear that momentum that will be able to be fully utilized for the practice of Tantra and so forth.
There's the thing of some tango is the Pena, such Levi Chani, and it's Suzuki, such mission of Tevana, and Chawaya Chiova, Chavala Chinchiova, and the Dick Tony, and Gawagomiachi, young Manjunsan, Tangan two Messania, some of Tanchi, need to change something, Chingajet of Jovana, the Sutsa in Yabu Mendoza, that the Zuma Chaya Chedu. And Matusa Chon, some of them. Do Sin Kanji, and Chinamda Cheng Tolia, and wrote to go at the vacation as well.
And also, along with that, it's really important to make sure that the attitude that we develop in our practice is a pure attitude, in that rather than comparing yourself with others and thinking well of yourself in relation to others, and thereby kind of, in that sense, you're looking down at those that do not do as well as you, and you become proud in thinking that I'm so much better than them. I was able to accomplish much better than them. Rather than doing that, it's good to, in some sense, look at where your deficiencies are in your practice. To look at, for example, those who are doing better than you and think that, well, I want to do better. Right? I want to develop my practice in a better way. If you then become proud in your own practice, and you think in thinking that I'm doing so much better than others, that will inhibit your spiritual progress.
Then I do some the any goods in that Namtan Jevainaya. Kawa shoot chairs, Kawa shooting, Lord Troop Kawa Chechin, Shilamachin, Lord Troop Pay, call it Likian. Hindi Nangosalia, Nanzupet, Lela with dessert losing on Olayachi, car changing sheets in Run, and that be Sanjit Terjavan and the Sanjit Kansas Rasi.
And also, it's good to get a perspective of the difficulties that are experienced in pursuing the state of enlightenment, particularly when you look at, for example, the life story of the Buddha, in which towards the end of his practice, before attaining the state of enlightenment, he practiced 6 years of ascetic practices in which food, for example, was quite meager. His food intake was quite small. And there were, of course, many other austerities and ascetic practices that the Buddha practiced before becoming Buddha. So it's good to think about them also in relation to our spiritual practice, because if we think that we can still be light-hearted, half-hearted about a spiritual practice and think that I can wing it. Now I can still attain the state of enlightenment with just the effort that I put into my spiritual practice. It would then, in some sense, reduce what the Buddha has achieved. It would make what the Buddha has achieved to be not that much of great value. So it's also good to adopt that perspective over the difficulties that are required from our side, the hard work that we need to put into that spiritual practice. And you also get perspective in looking at the life story of the Buddha. When you look at his background, being born into a royal family, having lived his earlier life as a prince in a powerful royal court, having enjoyed all those resources and goodies that were part of living a life as a prince in a royal court, got married. He had a son, his own flesh and blood, and at the end, he renounced all of them. He left all of them in order to pursue the state of enlightenment. Which also, in some sense, you can say that it gives us as an indication about what the attitude that we need to have when we also practice a spiritual practice, in the sense that so long as we still remain attached to pleasures and comforts that are included within our states of existence, if we remain attached to them, we're not going to be able to attain the state of Buddhahood. The Buddha had to reduce that sense of attachment, to give up that sense of attachment to all those pleasurable objects in order to pursue his own spiritual path. So these are the points that Geshe wanted to make today in his meeting with you guys, thinking of the time that you have spent together in the last couple of years, things that you have studied together, the things that you have discussed together. These are the things that you can pack up in a bundle and take with you all the way to the attainment of the state of enlightenment. And other things, such as, for example, whatever you have accumulated in this life, your wealth, your resources, things that hold some sentimental value for you, all of those things at some point will be left behind. You'll not be able to take all of them with you together all the way up to the state of enlightenment. So it's also good to then, from your point of view, to develop an appreciation of the things that will continue with you all the way through to the attainment of the state of enlightenment. Think about it and also develop continuity and consistency in your spiritual practice. Daily think of the 3 objects of refuge. And even as far as doing only one recitation of the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum, if you do that with the recollection of the 3 objects of refuge, it pours meaning into that day. It means that, at least for that day, you did something that is meaningful in terms of this life. So those are the points that Geshe wanted to bring up today. Thank you very much for bearing with him. Have you got any questions?
Could Geshe give some advice? We have 2 retreats coming up, short, Vajrasattva, Lamrim. Some of us are going. What can we do to prepare for those retreats?
Should I repeat it for the people at home, by the way? So that I don't know if people at home have heard us. So we have 2 short retreats coming up, Vajrasattva and Lamrim retreat. What could we do in order to prepare for those 2 short retreats? Till Christmas jela, December nima sum shi sache, ani losa jela dunta nisrin la lamrim sunjunu shuro. Onzo kashi den the special shogi chashi yoresa. Dila tariche chedu karichena yaksares. Tari kandichena yagares.
The Tadi should be Komuchia there was Ajika Kalaka Rayona, the Sajigabuyana, 즉 삼성 디서 차티제 되서라 다조디 다디기 디즈디 촐라 마다마치니 그게 다지 아니 아무도 갔어 도지셈바 곰데디 다 받아치 아니 소소인 데모 답도 주신 사샤비 아니 디곰데기와 원하는 당의 시각이 아니 시작한 수준ችን 도지셈 곰데치 연산비기 아니 콜론 슈치고치케 아니 지곰데기다 지 딘디요르다 딘디토라테 시투바나 아니 곰데치가리야 편도용으로 왔어 자위처럼서야 딱 모두칭이기래 아니 모두시 종토네 미와 잠아이노 미와 텐데 데마지 차그레스 that is all directions.
The main preparation that you can do, if you are going to take part in those activities, or at least part of them, is correcting your motivation. That's the most important thing. In that you might be preoccupied by what type of food will I get, what would be the accommodation like, and so forth. These type of thoughts are not the type of motivation that is good to have when you prepare for such activities. The motivation that you need to generate in order to prepare for such activities is, for example, when you do some of the activities or all of them involved with the Vajrasattva retreat, which is designed for for purifying karma accumulated before, then you think of negativities that you have done before. And you think, how can then I lay down those negative actions and purify them? I will do that through this practice of Vajrasattva. So through that, you develop your motivation, you correct your motivation that drives you to take part in those activities. So this is the best type of preparation that you should have, that you could have in preparing for those retreats.
Anebinata lamram doinata dundani lamram dikalaya angelis chozalaya kalaya samari kala sobini samari the kalaya which is right man samsung roch hindi chene and lamram the chinde chewana the betabkyo ros and nganzu the dindi kalaya tamachamle de ta lu thugrinaya dindika jiduri kere nganzu teda matu bainaya and the running now kala teaching maravada Zoni Yusi Maras. Is a color teaching Maranaya. And a color Gavchinita, and Lauren the Chingo Samsung, Colon Dingy of another, and it won't do charge it of the Yashi Deans at Isra. He and Lauren Laya Pentoras.
And also in terms of the Lamrim teaching retreat that will come after the New Year. So we're going to spend a couple of weeks looking at the steps of the path of enlightenment. Now, we're still working at reduced capacity as a fallout of COVID-19, right? So you might be thinking that because of that reduced capacity, I'm not sure what would be the food situation like during those 2 weeks. Will I get good food? Will I get plentiful food? How will it be like, and so forth? And then you're going to get deflated about the whole food situation leading up to the 2-week retreat. It's not really a good motivation, a good state of mind to have when you go into something like that. You think that, you can think that, the Buddha actually practiced 6 years of ascetic practices. The Buddha worked really hard, even as far as not getting enough food for 6 years. Now, it is very likely that I will have food every day, at least once. It's not going to I'm not going to go completely hungry with no food whatsoever for one day, even within those 2 weeks. So I'll get by. The most important thing is to focus my mind on the steps of the path to enlightenment. So if you then develop your motivation in this way, your attitude in this way, you get to feel that that's a good preparation leading up to such set of teachings.
And
if it does happen that you go hungry, just come up to Geshe-la's place. He'll pull out something from his fridge. He's going to share it with you happily. You're not going to go hungry. Sharing is caring. Sorry? You'll wash up. All right. Go Charlotte did some inside. Yeah, but no, do it well. Wash up well. Yeah. I think that both of us became dismayed about the Australian way of washing dishes. So you pour water into a sink, a bit of detergent, clean the plate, then dip it in the same murky water and pull it out. Appalling. That's really appalling. So do better than that. Yeah. So I guess that kind of will first of all make you sign a contract that you're going to do the washing well.
I actually have a request, Geshe-la. Could sometime next year in your busy schedule, could you advise us and help us start on the process of monitoring for our preliminary practices, please?
So the question is, could Geshe-la next year spend some time also when he finds the time to give some instructions on the preliminary practices? Generally, que c'est du tout ramo ina ani unjo tola consola deshe gap to inas. Yes, there. So Geshe-la puts it up to me. If I have time, we can do it. Yeah.
Thank you.
More people might have questions.
I have a question. So in Tantric practice, in Tantric meditation, there's a talk about duality disappears. So it's a practice where duality goes away. So and when we talk about bodhicitta and emptiness, seems to be two separate things. They talk about two separating bodhicitta and emptiness. Is one of them, like bodhicitta state or emptiness, going like by practicing one and go into the other, like it's, or they are separate things, like it's. Do you understand my question?
So I'll try to repeat it and see if this is what you mean. So in relation to Tantra, you sometimes come across statements that say that things go into a non-dual state. You need to meditate on non-duality. Now, considering those two major principles of the practice that Geshe-la mentioned bodhicitta and emptiness. These two appear to be two, not only two, but separate things. Now, when we consider these two and also appearing to be separate, then what is the essence of non-duality in relation to them? Is it that when you meditate on bodhicitta, it becomes non-dual with emptiness, or are they still kept separately? Is that the question? Dila Quran sangagi tabdende testa du dila kalagirensen nina nuba se di amna nisu mebe gyur se di chi serstoa nisu meba nisu yoba nisu meba se di ta nisu meba tola samlo tawaina kandechina tenson pena kiranta da gongi ngushi dila tu ngushi dila chanchugi semtan toni tawa zo gongo gresen soimba tenson din ni imbalayan bet karden tungi sanson tungi dosa nisu meba se di ni kaga maimba dende chagirbes yamana pena chanchugi sen gom du ton chanchugi sen toni nisu meba chagirbes yamana di chanchugi sen gom du yan di tan toni daran di bed logares ni daran chagires di nisu meba se di kandechinas.
Tiri Tachadan di Chakura Redosra. Ani Re Penatanga Doi Chodan, and a pig nag chop ni, and a sondan takes chick. Yang Ketandi and Keba Yunguras. Then do chon sound down the and Chanju Sam said the Tanjishuba Manji, and it Tunsum Laya, sound Tanjire Modern, Tung Yambasha Kalaya, and Tomani Kuralia Yambashan, Drech Sungores.
This is a complicated topic. It's a complicated topic because, first off, this term non-duality, things existing, or appearing to be two or in a dualistic manner, and then meditating on non-duality is a type of terminology that you see not only in the tantras but also in the sutras. So we use the same terms, non-duality, but the import of those terms changes its meaning slightly when you look at the sutras and when you look at the tantras, right? So they bear slightly different meaning, or at least the way that you apply them to the practice is slightly different. To begin with, in the sutra system, when you look at when you meditate on bodhicitta and when you meditate on the view of emptiness, it seems that when your main meditation practice is on emptiness, then you go into this meditative equipoise in which you only meditate on emptiness. So you're single pointed on emptiness. So that leaves bodhicitta to be something that you do in between.
That Nag Chon Xiaondi, Nag Shon, the Xion Zambala, Chetangi, Tabshini said, Chanju sent the Tony to Tawa Shayadi, so have the sheriff Nilateni, and Riversanji could go Yanza, and Tabli Chanju Sam said that Don Sheva Manshenki Piggy, and some Gentamji children, Lame Zosan Piggy, and Dinji Gongo, Lord Tilla, Lord Rava Dindilia, the Gomundos, Lord Tamu, Kanji, and the Tomani Toby, she did the more year meba, but Dindic Tony, Shayaji Yungores.
So then your approach to your tantric practice is slightly different. So in the tantric practice, we take those two aspects of method and wisdom, and we combine them in a non-dual manner in one consciousness. They become a single entity, one entity in one consciousness. So in the sutra system, we take up practices such as bodhicitta. We meditate on them with a cause consciousness. In a tantric practice, we don't use that cause consciousness. We develop consciousnesses that are more subtle. And in those consciousnesses that are more subtle, we work on the integration of both method and wisdom.
Those TV language show on Shuni, any shown to Zulia Chixi, any Chetti to Niambaina, Tenia Chagaris Rock. The company, you walk the Jadan Karan is in Kanya Hakomadinia, Chanju, and the Tony to the Tawali, any to Yakoyak, Hayam maybe Kalia, and Jean Tidina, Devanianchi, Kalakagoras does right.
So it is a complicated point, and Geshe doesn't feel that we have at this point in time the ability to speak about it very extensively and make everything clear. So then the approach to that Geshe feels should be that if you want to study that to a greater degree, then it's good to do it in the context of a full tantric practice in which, first of all, you receive an empowerment to that, and then you get a commentary on Tantra or commentary on the practice, and through that you develop a good understanding of them. But then in order to do that, then you need also to do the other preparations, such as, for example, to study Shantideva's Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life, to study the steps of the path of enlightenment, so that you build all those other elements or an understanding of all the other elements that need to be present there in order for a tantric practice to occur. If you neglect those aspects and only focus on Tantra, the practice of Tantra will not result well. So of course, Geshe says that in general. Doesn't really, it doesn't know precisely what your background is. So it's not saying that you don't do Tantra now, you now go and study this first of all. But in general, when you look at how you build up your spiritual practice in order then to be able to practice Tantra well, then you build up the foundation of your knowledge from a Sutra perspective. You study the steps of the path to enlightenment, bodhicitta, the view of emptiness, Shantideva's guide to Bodhisattva way of life. Then you receive empowerments. Then you receive a commentary on Tantra and your spiritual and your tantric practice, and through that, you're kind of able to create a more stable and firm tantric practice.
We have a small offering. Thank you. As the Dalai Lama, His Holiness agreed, we have good teaching program here. You are our abbot. You are our leader. Good
Take
teacher.
me to your leader.
Take me to your leader for lunch.
Yeah.
So thank you for guiding us and guiding our teachers. We have wonderful teachers as well. And of course, without Katsun, it would not mean much. We would not understand. So thank you very much. And Katsun, thank you very much too.
Thank you.
Told not to trip over.
Yeah, don't trip over.
Thank you very much.
Oh. Thank you. Thank you very much.
A group photo with
Yeah.
this one, yes.
Yeah, sure. Come for a group photo. Also, the people at home, come for a group photo.
Yeah, Pauline, Kate.
Yeah, Pauline, Kate, come for a group photo.
Yeah, we have a bit more variety.
Do you want your chair here, or do you want to have it?
Just getting out of the way.
Okay. Yeah, please come along. Don't hold back. Don't be shy. Don't hold back. Come on, Gracie.
Come now.
Actually, you should be in the middle. You're the boss. You sit here. No, you sit here. No, you sit here. All right.
And pretend I'm small.
Small and meek. Are you all right like that? Are you sure you don't want to sit here?
No, it's done.
All right.
It's further down.
I'm sorry, the people online can't be here.
Do you want to come or?
It's just not one of this. They want it.
It's okay. Yeah.
We'll have one photo with you and one photo with the DB Dharmadurs, just so we can distinguish ourselves. We're not partisan, we're just partisan. Bodhicitta.
Take lots.
Take lots.
Do the gecko one.
Don't hold back. Do an iPad selfie.
Thank you. Please come and join us 12:30 for lunch.
Yeah,
Prepare some food.
they've just got to warm it up.
Do you need help standing up?
It's all good.
12:30.
Yeah.
All right. Do you need any help? Thank you.
They've got it super organised. Super organised.
No. Yeah. I got out of bed today, so yeah.
All good. We all
Thank you
feel
so
the
much
same.
for coming. See
Thank
you
you.
soon. Thank you.
Will we let you know when we're ready? I think 12:30 is good.
Do you need any?
Are we offline?
So, just calling Kate.
So let me just turn this off.
Is it off?
Not yet. Do you want me to though?
So calling in Kate, so when are we regrouping?
2 o'clock you said.
2 o'clock. We regroup at 2 and I think we'll all just come together on the Zoom then. So we'll see you then.
Okay, thank you.
Oh,
I work in Israel.